Thanks everyone for joining us tonight for our fourth in the series of our What the Tech events that we've been running. We're running these in partnership with Women in Leeds Digital with the lovely Sarah Tulip. So I guess for those of you who have joined who don't know who I am, my name's Melanie and I work for Transition Partners. So we are a tech, digital, IT change and transformation recruitment consultancy, but we do a lot of other things as well, like events such as this, blogs, podcasts, you name it, we are doing it at the minute, which is fantastic. So we've got the fourth in the series tonight of the What the Tech events, and we've got a fantastic panel lined up, which you can hopefully see right now. A lot's changed since we did the first event back in May, and I just think it's fantastic that this is the fourth event that we've been able to do. And I think, there's going to be a lot more interesting conversation about, I guess, where things are going to go moving forward with the digital landscape, and really looking forward to hearing everyone's experiences and insights. So thank you all for joining us. And yeah, I'm sure it's going to be another fantastic conversation. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah, and I'm sure everyone else will do their intros and enjoy the event, everyone.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you everybody for attending tonight. So this is episode 4 of What the Tech is Next, and for the next hour I've got an amazing panel, and we're going to be talking really about, I guess, their honest and personal visions about how they see the future and what's going on right now in our industry. So starting off, it'd be great to get you guys to introduce yourself. So first of all, we have our man abroad today, our international man of mystery, Chris Roberts, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your business.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Chris Roberts. I'm the founder and CEO of Nimble Approach. So I run a product and technology consultancy. My background is in sort of agile delivery. We sort of use that now to solve complex problems for our users and deliver value in the most sort of lean way we see fit.
Fantastic. And Zandra?
I'll just come off mute. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PanIntelligence. We're a Leeds-based data analytics software developer. We were lucky enough to secure our Series A fundraise at the end of last year, and we're currently scaling the business and the team all in Yorkshire, which is brilliant. We do have an operation out in Boston, but actually nobody's there yet. So a physical space and nobody in it, but we're managing to serve a global market here from Leeds, which is fantastic.
Fantastic, thank you. Sarat?
Hi there, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hedgehog Lab. Hedgehog Lab is a digital product studio. We are headquartered in Newcastle, but we're a global entity, and we essentially work with brands to design and build digital products, really.
Fantastic. And finally, Renee.
Hi, I'm Renee Hunt, and I am the director of Group Digital Platforms, which is based in Leeds. It's a Sky organization, and we are responsible for Sky products like Sky Sports and Sky Kids and Sky News, both in the UK, but also in all of our other Sky territories like Germany and Italy. And all of those products are built, managed, and operated out of Leeds.
Cool. I think I've heard of you guys, Renee, actually. So yeah, amazing.
So might have heard of us once. Or
yeah, I think so. So yes, but thank you to all of you. So first of all, to people taking part today, we're going to be recording this, so we're going to be using this later for other people to attend and enjoy this. But also, there's an opportunity to ask questions. So we have a chat and we have a Q&A. So please chat amongst yourselves and feel free to ask questions, and I will get through as many of them as I can for the panel. Today, I want to sort of go through a series of questions that we talked loosely, but hopefully it will lead to some really interesting opinions and conversations. But I think a really interesting place to start at the minute was thinking about our organisation. So, we're all working in digital organisations, and I speak to a lot of businesses, but the ones that are based in technology probably going through very different journeys at the moment to some of the wider industry. So I thought it'd be a good conversation to talk about sort of the accelerated use of technology and how that's affected your businesses, because I feel that there's the word pivot, obviously, that we must use, but then there's a huge amount of change going on. And I thought it would be good to talk about some of the things that have gone in your organisations that have, really moved, changed, and driven your business. So maybe Zandra, we were just talking about something that you guys have been doing. I think that'd be a fantastic place to start.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and hello to everybody that's on the call. So yeah, we announced today a partnership with a new customer in partnership with Cisco to do a really quick pivot for us in the middle of lockdown, which was enabling the retail sector to open up and keep people safe in stores. So we're using technology that was already present in those stores, so footfall monitoring data, combining it with data analytics, which is our tool, and another platform which is sort of combining that and providing some analysis to present really whether or not it's safe to enter that store by showing customers as they walk in how many people are in store, what the capacity of that store is, and also giving this information about peak times, not peak times, that you can consume and see remotely should you wish, and it helps those large operations to get some visibility of what footfall is looking like and what those peak times are for keeping people safe. Now, we managed to do that within 3 weeks, and it was a real kind of no code setup. So this was all existing tech. We didn't write a line of code between us. We literally brought 3 technologies together and spun that around incredibly quickly. And I think what we are seeing at the moment, and certainly, you know, we're a no code tool, you don't need coding skills to deploy us, but actually the coming together of the tech community to plug their solutions together to solve problems faster absolutely is gaining momentum through this, because, you know, there is an urgency around delivering certain solutions to problems, especially when you come into a situation like we've had in the last few months. And it's been really interesting to see how the technology community has kind of come together and join forces to make those things happen. And certainly we've seen that in a number of different contexts. But yeah, a really exciting project to be involved with.
Yeah, cool. And I think maybe moving to Sarat, because, you know, you work in mobile app, you know, that space, there must have been some interesting things that have come to fruition because of COVID to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think obviously it's been a really challenging time for most businesses, and going to, you know, Zandra's point, I think, you know, what's really revealed is that the opportunities that technology is presenting businesses that traditionally wouldn't have thought about how digital can help them. For example, we're working with one of the largest councils in the UK right now to really, you know, explore how digital technology can solve some of the challenges around urban areas like city centers. So we're currently going through a research phase, and we're collecting a lot of feedback. So anybody who's on this webinar, if you can go on our social media and give us your feedback in terms of what your city center experiences are and how, you know, how you're engaging with those spaces. And you know, I can't say much about the project now because it's currently in conceptual stage, but we're certainly seeing how things like apps and digital products can really help us try and tackle those challenges, you know, from a you know, public perspective. And from an enterprise perspective, we're seeing a huge demand in digital workplace solutions, really people rethinking, you know, how they can work remotely, how their technology and systems can adapt to a world where everyone's on their laptop or on their mobile or their iPads. So, you know, we're seeing a huge amount of interest. You know, I think it's been an interesting time. Obviously, it's a really difficult time for a lot of people. The pandemic has caused huge chaos. But actually, we are very lucky in the tech sector in that we're able to contribute some real solutions. You know, what Zandra and her team are doing is brilliant in terms of making retail spaces, you know, safer for, you know, for people. I know a company in Newcastle called Occupon that has just deployed a massive solution with Aldi, the supermarket, which does a very similar thing around making sure that, you know, you've got the right people in the supermarket, that the temperature monitoring, etc. So there's so much innovation coming in the tech space, and I think we're lucky that we're able to obviously bring that to bear on these problems, really.
Yeah, I agree, making lives better. And I think, Renee, you know, probably one of the most important things that's happened during COVID is that, you know, we've still had Sky and other, you know, available streaming services, because a lot of people have spent a lot of time at home, and if they've not been walking up hills, they've been watching TV. So what's been going on with you guys?
It's been an incredible couple of months for us in Sky. I think first we were dealing with the same challenges everybody was. How do we keep our people safe? How do we deploy them home and make sure that they have the technology they need to work at home? For those of us who work in technology, we already do that. So that wasn't a big change. but we have, you know, thousands of contact center agents who suddenly needed to be able to work from home. And even though we stopped selling because that was the right and conscious thing to do, we still had to have agents who were there to either allow people to downgrade or upgrade their packages, as well as service. So being able to be on the phone, so we had to immediately kit out an entire group of people for work from home who never had done that before. So that was one area. Our CEO described it as, you know, it was the most productive quarter we have ever had. At which point, one of my cheekier colleagues said, maybe that's because we all work remotely. That wasn't accepted. But we really just sort of focused on how do we bridge the gap to ensure the customer experience with technology. So the big things for our team personally was about shutting down sports and then bringing sports back on. That's my husband. Thank you. So, and he's brought me a nice iced tea. So part of that was when we bring sports back, the experience is going to be really different. And so how do we enrich it? So the first thing we did was we used technology to allow people to downgrade their sports package or take a break. And we offered that to all sports customers because that was the right thing to do. And then we used technology to automatically turn it back on once sports came back so that there was no gap. We introduced more apps on the box, on the Sky Q box. So Sky Q box has lots of other apps on there. We introduced more apps on the box in that quarter than we had done in the past year. And they were games. So anybody tried Tetris, we had all kinds of Tetris competitions going on. So vintage games, lots more kids content, lots more content with more channels were brought forward to make sure that there was entertainment for people who were locked in. And then, as I said, for my team, it was all about how do we enrich a sports environment where there are no fans, right? So, you know, I think we brought the crowd noise back, and the way Sky did it was like a DJ deck, right? So some people played all around. It doesn't add anything. And so we had a guy with like a mixer with different crowd noises that were already Sky noises that we kind of replayed and muxed back. Huge recap. If anybody tried recap on the phone, it allowed you to, or on the call, it allowed you to go back and catch up on all the goals if you hit the red button. That was something developed in the time. And then Zandra, what you said about bringing no code solutions, we introduced a co-viewing, a fan zone product that allows you to have like a Zoom call with interaction with the TV. So you could drive the chants, you could ask the quiz questions, you could compete against your friends. We did that in 4 weeks. A competitor who shall remain nameless had something similar that took 2 years, and we introduced ours in 4 weeks. So it was busy, to say the least, but we were constantly looking for and almost kind of reawaken to the potential for technology to drive different kinds of engagement experiences with our customers, but also and how they engage with the content on the TV. Really exciting time. I'm exhausted. I had a holiday just now, so I'm looking for better, but my goodness, it was busy.
Cool, thank you for that. And Chris?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I guess first of all, congrats to Zandra. That sounds an awesome project. You guys are one and very relevant right now. I guess indirectly thanks to Renee as well, as a massive sports fan and someone who enjoyed the cheaper Sky Sports package. I think for us, yeah, I mean, we've just about to release an MVP. We were talking before the guests joined everyone about, you know, the impact on like the high street and city centres and stuff. So we've enjoyed working with quite a well-known high street retailer to try and sort of leverage their offering and almost like pivot. You know, I think before COVID, we were in this sort of weird, is Amazon going to rule the roost world in the high street? And I think we, you know, with that on top, I think some brands that have been proactive rather than waiting for the inevitable. I think we've enjoyed the use of working with them, collaborative, you know, as one team, sort of know us and them, to get an MVP out there that will really sort of pivot their offering. I think while we're on about technology, probably a thing we still haven't mentioned there, I think a thing important for us is being just more getting to know our people better. I think we're lucky, I think as everyone is maybe on this call, you know, the industry we're in, that, you know, we can, and it probably shouldn't have come to this, but, you know, understand people's preferences and lifestyle choices a lot better. And actually, does it really matter if somebody works remotely 7 mile 3 or takes a break in the middle of the day because suddenly they're having to homeschool a load of kids who are now at home, or that sort of thing. So I think the flexibility with technology and the fact that it's come to this, it shouldn't have, but we've used 2020 to figure out an optimized way to be flexible and respect people's sort of lifestyle choices and know our people better, really.
Okay, so that kind of makes me think about happiness. So during COVID, no one was allowed to be happy or ever talk about anything positive. Those first 2 months, like, you had to, even if like you had something good had happened, you know, I had people who found out they were pregnant and didn't want to tell anybody because that happiness was, you know, low key. What do you think about your employees and COVID and where people are getting to now? Do you think that happiness has been a byproduct in some way, and maybe in this industry, in the way that we're able to work and change? Does anybody have any thoughts around happiness? You know, they're starting to engage with your employees, see them. How do you feel that humans have reacted?
I think just to jump in quickly, and then I'll pass it up. I think just getting to know individuals in terms of preferences, like, because everyone says, don't they, and it gets a bit of a cliche and a bit of a yawn thing about, oh, we love people and stuff, and it's very easy to say. I think for us, that's been more about, you know, getting to know them, you know, obviously without being intrusive, a bit deeper in terms of, you know, who does live alone and actually is a bit lonely by all of, you know, the lockdown going on, who actually feels very crazily insular because they feel like they're living at work, you know, and juggling homeschooling with kids with their partner. You know, I think getting to know people at a deeper level and knowing what makes them tick means we can sort of tailor things to make them happier. For example, obviously irony that we're chatting on Zoom now, but like, we started doing one-to-ones with some of our staff, you know, just doing a call in the garden, you know, because they don't want to be on, I don't know about you, I'm probably on 30 plus Zoom calls a week. They don't want to feel like they're on show all the time, and actually they want a break from the screen. So I think just all our people are individuals. I think just getting to know what makes them tick at a deeper level and having that greater almost duty of care, which maybe sounds a bit full on, but I think, you know what I mean? I think it has been really important to creating a happy work environment, which it certainly isn't one size fits all.
Yeah, because some of it is virtual now. So, you know, any other thoughts? Somebody else was going to add to that, I think.
I think one of the words that I've heard from a lot of my team, you know, I mean, happiness, and you're absolutely right. I think, you know, happiness, at least in the first few, you know, weeks and months of COVID was quite a challenge because of what's happening in the wider world. But I think the word that comes up a lot in the conversations I have with my team is gratitude. And what I mean by that is we are so lucky, you know, in my company and in our industry, you know, because of the way we're structured and because of the hyper competitive talent circumstances we've got, that, you know, we were talking about this earlier, you know, if we were quarantined because of travel or whatever, we could just, you know, fire up a laptop and work. You know, if you have to go on the sick, you know, the sick benefits in the tech industry are world beating. You know, we wake up to news that every day tens of thousands of jobs are going. You know, in an environment like that, you know, the fact that we're able to grow as a business, that we're actually hiring right now. And so I sense a lot of gratitude from people. I mean, you know, touch wood, we've not had a single employee affected, you know, either directly or indirectly by COVID, you know, so that's, you know, that's been really important, including some people who potentially had to shield. So you know, the overwhelming sense, I mean, I wouldn't say happiness, because I think there is a you know, level of anxiety still about where this is going. But I think certainly the word I hear from a lot of my team, including myself, is gratitude, that we're so lucky to work and, you know, be involved in an industry where, you know, we're actually mostly better off, you know, than most people, you know, in traditional, you know, day-to-day industries like retail or travel, etc., who are massively struggling.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think for me, I think happiness is a big ask. There's probably periods of happiness with silly things like pub quizzes, and there was a disastrous time when I tried to do a bingo match in an online, which I think made my team very happy. I was personally miserable, but they found the whole thing hilarious. But I think for me, it's also like you find out the measure of an organization in a bad time. And if, you know, one of the things I remarked was, I like my company better now because we really, really doubled down on our core values. And instead of everybody worrying about me and this objective and that objective, the world was focused on one thing. And so I watched our company, you know, stop building boxes and use the equipment to make PPE, and pay our drivers that normally do installs to take people back and forth to the hospital who were in the NHS. And that was so wonderful, giving us extra hours to work in our community so we could volunteer. That was the big stuff. But even on the individual level, people reaching out to people who were shielding or isolating alone, getting to know your neighbors, right? Who's there, you know, and just the deep sense of care and concern for other people, right? And the real focus on what was important at that time. And, you know, the respect for that, you know, the kid jumping. We had a call with a vendor where the vendor's apartment was so small, him and his wife had a desk in the bedroom. And at one point, the toddler jumps in the room and starts jumping on the bed. He's freaking, he's so embarrassed. And at that point, we were over it, right? It's like, it's life. We're, you know, whatever, as long as they're not going to hurt themselves, don't worry about it. It's quite entertaining. So I think it was that sort of, you know, it's a shame it took a pandemic, but that sort of resetting for the world, right? This sort of community, caring about people, that people have families, that husbands walk in, you know, that somebody shouts across the room, and you don't have to have like this angst about, oh my gosh, I'm not being perfectly professional, you know? Like, I've just put makeup over gardening because that's where I was before I ran in to do this call. And this is wonderful, this part of it, right? So I don't think it's a happiness, but I think it's like a contentment and a real sense of comfort that the values of the organization that I joined and the values of the people I work with are actually really solid. And that's lovely. That's really, really lovely.
Yeah, I don't think it's happiness, but I think it's really cool that it's almost like a social improvement in the business community, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it shouldn't have come to this, but we have actually used it to break down barriers that, you know, maybe were too formal or shouldn't have been there in the first place.
I feel like it's just humanized everything a lot more. I say one word that just all the time feels like, oh, we've actually made business human. About time. You know, culture and welfare and, you know, well-being and all of these things that we talk about, we've just suddenly been able to achieve and not be together to do that. And it's, you know, just, I suppose it's a really good feeling that it proves to us we can change these things and we can change them quickly for the better. And therefore, I think that's got to sit within industry and leaders now and challenge us all to not put barriers in the way of things that we can change, because I think we can change them. And it's just, what I'm hoping is it creates a pace of change for everything across an organisation, for organisational improvement, whatever that might be, because we've sort of proved that can be done quickly and easily, and you can bring your team along with you at the same time. It doesn't need loads of consultation, and, you know, we can just get on a call together, have a conversation, make it happen and work it out as we go and be okay with that. And I think, you know, no matter how big the organisations are that I've spoken to, it feels like everyone's just kind of been in it together and embraced it, knowing that, you know, the intention is just to help and support one another, because I think everybody went into this, crikey, we're in it together, let's work it out as we go. And that's felt really good. Like, everybody in the organisation has participated in that change. It's not come top down. It's not been a policy it's everybody's been involved, and therefore it's just felt honest and authentic and human and real. And And that's been, I think, we'll look back on this and I feel and go, wow, God, that felt great in some ways. It was difficult, but it felt great. We did something special together, and I just hope we can keep that somewhere.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, that's the thing, is I think as leaders, it's really important that you make sure that it continues and stays. It might not have been you that initiated it, and it might have been everybody, but it only takes a handful of leaders to step backwards, and a handful of it, and it affects everything. And I think it's people remembering and keeping the momentum is so important. Sorry, Chris.
No, I was only going to say, and probably because this is only iteration 1, right? And I think probably the lesson is to not do it before we're pushed next time, because it feels a little bit like that this time.
Agreed. So we've got a really good question. So I'm gonna read the question. So it's from Becca, and it says, "Amazing stuff. Excited to hear different perspectives. At Facebook, we're calling COVID the biggest driver of all digital transformation. I was really impressed by how people change their business overnight, find the opportunities extremely quickly in the old unprecedented times. E.g., small businesses building websites and online presence at the time. Do you each have companies outside of your own that have really impressed you? Is there somebody else that has, you've watched and thought, I love what they've done, I want to see more of this?
So I found out about one after the fact. So I went to HomeSense, which is a TK Maxx store, because I'm addicted to HomeSense. And so when they finally said you can go shopping again, that's where I went. And so I was waiting in the queue, and the lady who was there to manage the queue to go in and give you your hand sanitizer told me what they did overnight. And they introduced an employee app to allow all the employees to stay in contact with each other. And because they're a big part of their culture is the stores have their own sort of like employee groups, and they do stuff, right? So they had art competitions and baking week and this and everything to just keep the employees motivated and happy. They do some online selling, but they just basically try to keep everybody engaged. They furloughed no one, even though they couldn't bring people into stores. And what was really telling for me was this was somebody whose job it is to stand in the door, prepared to tell a total stranger about all the wonderful things their head office had done to keep them. And because I said, I can't imagine anybody being grumpy coming to HomeSense. And she says, no, and the staff aren't grumpy. And then she went and told me everything that happened. That was super impressive, because I wouldn't have expected it of a retail. And it made me even happier to go in there and spend money.
Yeah, that's cool. Anybody else?
We're fortunate because we sell to software vendors. So we're sort of seeing the tech pivots in our customer base. There's a couple that stand out. Tribal, they provide 80% of the student platforms for universities and colleges in the UK. And obviously a sector massively disrupted by this. And the first thing they did when all of those college students and university students were now at home was they built, and again, a no code, it was quick. It was us with a bit of their tech and some other tech, built a welfare app that basically was looking for predicting students that are most likely to require some sort of welfare call and welfare intervention, because you're not physically, the tutors aren't with them, they're not around their peers. How do we find the students that maybe are going into environments where they don't have the support and they feel isolated? So that was a communication platform, but also had a predictive element to identify people that these welfare officers could pick the phone up to and go, hey, you all right? Because it was looking for all of their interactions, how often are they logging into something? Are they keeping pace with their learning? Are they chatting and communicating on the platforms that the colleges and the universities provide for the students, like, your Slack channels and those kind of things from a tech point of view. And it was super quick, they did it in 3 weeks. And it was just the fact that was their first thought. And they provided that to their customers. It wasn't the customers driving that. It's like, hey, we think this is going to be really useful. And then all the customers went, this is brilliant, and picked it up and ran with it. So, I just think, there is some brilliant examples. And I think our job probably is to try and surface those a little bit and bring those to light. Come out maybe a little bit too further down the line. But there's been some really good examples in our customer base where they've just kind of had the idea and made it happen really quickly.
My examples, I don't have a particular, there are loads of, for me, the real shining examples of other businesses that have done great. And, I'll say something controversial here. In tech, we're in a bubble, right? We always think we're changing the world, etc. But the businesses that have inspired me certainly have been the local community businesses. Restaurants who have had existential crises. Our local restaurant down the street, obviously had to shut down, and they use that time and the supplies and everything that they've got to cook for NHS staff, to support the community, to cook for a retirement home, etc. And I think, and these are businesses that were effectively, having an existential crisis. So for me, the most inspirational has been those kind of, the corner shops, the community businesses, the small retail, spaces, etc. Because, you could argue that the big businesses and the tech businesses probably have the resources and the capacity to do it, whereas the small ones, are very much in an existential crisis. So there's a huge list, everybody from, like I said, the restaurant across the street from us to the corner shop, etc. And I think it goes back to, Renee's point about really that and Zandra's point about the humanizing factor of it. So I've been hugely impressed by lots of local small businesses, really, completely outside tech. And, I genuinely feel in tech we're privileged, right? Great. I think, we have the resources and the capacity and the skills to be able to build great solutions. But like I said, being candid, our business is not, it's not facing an existential threat. It's got challenges. So I think it's those small businesses, and I think as Rebecca mentioned, the little retail shops that have pivoted really quickly to selling online, for example. I build digital products, so I take it for granted that it's quite straightforward to set up a Shopify shop. But to a small business that has never sold online, doesn't understand how to process credit cards, etc., that takes a lot of courage, and that takes a leap of faith to set up an online Shopify shop and start selling online, local food producers, etc. So I think, for me, that's been really inspirational, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's been a big transition for a lot of small businesses. Chris, is there anybody who's been on your radar?
Yeah, I think just first of all, a massive +1 to Sarat's point about, the local businesses that have just not even had pivot into a tech, pivot into a tech-driven world as on their radar, and, just setting up little, Facebook groups and what have you, and actually, ironically, the little community places seem to be doing better than the city centres. So it's a big +1 to that, Sarat's point. I think, not particularly a massive corporate guy, but actually the thing that stuck in my mind was, and for maybe a weird reason, like the Airbnb stuff. So I think, hospitality have been travel, hit massively. I think, and they had to make a crazy amount of redundancies, but I think it was just the sort of class, and back to Zandra's point, the human element at which they did it, is very, I read it and I thought it felt like the note from like the CEO, avoid a lot of cliches, but what they also did, as well as making all these people redundant, is they sort of pivoted their talent management team to actually go out and proactively advertise and find a lot of these people new roles as well. And I just thought that was really like admirable. They didn't have to do it. It was above and beyond. And it, that sort of echoed that they did really care about the staff, and, they built that people-driven culture from the start. So that was a nice touch.
Yeah, great. Okay, so there's another question from Claire. I think Renee's ticked that she'd like to answer this as well, about some of the barriers that COVID gave businesses or challenges that have been affecting women for a long time. So given an example of working around childcare, do you think organisations will carry the lessons learned forward and make more opportunities for women? I know there's been a comment as well about this being a wider issue, but Renee, would you like to start with this? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Bingo, you're in. I clicked the wrong button. So my view is, I think, again, it only took a pandemic to get people to recognize that parents, and not just women parents, have been dealing with this, and then it becomes even more real. I think if anything, it made us all appreciate how hard teachers' jobs are if you have children at home. But it's interesting. We are definitely thinking differently. I'd like to think we were progressive enough to be thinking differently about it before, but this is a genie that doesn't go back in the bottle. For those organizations that have proven that they can be productive, ready? With no planning, with children at home, and an unplanned work remotely. This is not remote working in any shape. This is trying to work remotely. And there's a massive difference between that being planned and thought through. So if we could do all that with a crisis, right? Imagine what happens when we plan it out and think about it, right? And I think Chris made the point about flexibility, right? And we made a deal. Don't tell anybody at Sky. We made a deal with our team that I don't care when you work. I don't care. I care that the stuff gets done, right? By the way, if you're a parent, you can't be parenting all day and then working all night. That won't work either. We're a team. We come together across the problem, and somebody will carry when somebody can't, right? And that was the deal we made, because the prize at the end of this is we all get more flexibility, all of us. I don't have children, but I had 3 elderly people quarantined with us, my parents and my husband's mother, right? So I'm dealing with, and I'm thinking the kids would have been easier, right? So we all had stuff, and watching men parent their children on Zoom calls is amazing, right? So I think it's been a massive leveler, right? The reason why this mattered the most is because almost all of our senior exec team have small kids. Whoa.
Totally agree.
Whoa, right? So it was, I think it's a big inflection point for us as a society to recognize that bringing your whole self to work sometimes involves little selves, old selves, husband selves, ex-husband selves. It does, that's all part of the big package. And I don't think this genie goes back in the bottle. It just can't. Right? It doesn't pass the blush test to say, oh yes, that was then, but now you have to be here and you have to work certain hours. Like, no, you don't.
No, I agree. Would anybody like to add, Sarat?
Yeah, actually, we were talking about this at work the other day, actually. It's not just for women, with children in terms of the impact and rethinking it. I think it's done wonders for the whole D&I space, really. Whether you're thinking about, mothers who want to work part-time, fathers who want to work part-time, whether you're starting to think about people who previously, because of physical disabilities, and mobility issues, couldn't essentially travel to work and commute and get on trains, etc. I think, for a whole host of things beyond just the gender issue, I think this is, for me, COVID has really got companies to start thinking about how diverse and inclusive they were. I'll be candid. We thought we were very diverse and inclusive. And we started to really look at, are we really that diverse and inclusive? And, really, there's so many segments of the market in a typical agency tech-led world that we never used to address. When now we start to look at that and go, actually, for example, as I mentioned, mothers who want to work part-time, for example, that now becomes a reality because of the ways of working. And I think to Renee's point, we were never a company that focused on presenteeism, but what I found interesting is we are now getting clients now not focusing on presenteeism too, because the challenge we had was we were pretty, as a progressive tech company, we were open-minded about, look, you can work whenever you want, etc. But when you're in the agency world, a client rings you at 4 p.m. on a Friday, they expect you to pick up that phone call. And now that expectation is gone, the presenteeism is gone, and they understand that you're really, fitting it around outcomes rather than being at your desk between 9 to 5. So I think it's actually, there's a bigger conversation around D&I totally beyond the gender, issue, which I think, a lot of companies will start reflecting on now.
But I think it's interesting you say that currently clients, but actually clients will drive consultancies and what they can do. And if all of a sudden the clients say, we want you back on site, there's very little you can do. It's like, do you work with that client anymore? There's some really bigger questions that I think leaders are going to decide again, whether this carries on or changes, and what side is decided at the top. But, you know, cross fingers that people are going to make the right decisions and really learn from this. Zandra?
It's just an observation of, we've talked a lot about us as leaders or just teams being in other people's homes and getting to know them better, right? That humanization factor. But there's been a really interesting dynamic for me. You know, I've got a 14 and an 11-year-old at home. Homeschooling, not so difficult because they're at an age where they can do that. But do you know what's been really interesting for me is I've always had that guilty complex of long hours and all that kind of stuff. They've been exposed to work and they can see, and they've been in the meetings and they understand what mummy does now. And they don't just understand it, they're coming into team meetings. I mean, they even ran one of the quizzes, you know, the kids kind of, you know, got really involved. They've even been kind of reviewing our new branding and all sorts of stuff. And it's been really good for them. And it's helping me to be okay about that, because that conversation is two-way. It's not just about me going into my team's homes, but my team coming into mine and my children. And I think the D&I area, I think there's something about it just levels everything, whether people are carers or have children or different challenges, and everyone just getting a bit more of a respect and appreciation for empathy for individual challenges and perspective that I think is incredible. But for me, the kids kind of getting closer to what I do has been really, really good for our family dynamic, and I think really good for the children as well.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Joe on a Monday morning knows that we have my 8-year-old knows that we have the partner call at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. You know, he's ready to hear the updates of what's happening in each of the service lines at EY. You know, he's like, oh, that's great news about, you know, they listen to me, you know, like he probably is having the strangest, you know, like understanding of commercial finance, but there you go. Chris, is there anything you want to add before we move on? We're getting some questions, so I want to try and get through them. Yeah,
just a quick one. Yeah, which is amazing to hear Zandra's sort of anecdote there. But I guess further to Sarat's point, I think on the consultancy side, I think we've certainly got a duty more to have those conversations, you know, with clients, even if they are, it doesn't feel like they should be, but even if they are difficult conversations, because I think at the end of the day, you know, certainly our business will succeed around the people who are part of it, and you know, the people who are part of it want to be motivated, they want to not feel stifled, they want to feel their lifestyle and their balance, you know, is all sort of taken into account. So certainly I think it's worth having those conversations with clients going forward.
Yeah, you can make those decisions, I guess, on merit. So there's a couple more questions. Is Kane Fulton from Tech Nation wants to know, has COVID increased your organised interest in any areas of emerging tech? And if yes, why? Is anybody moving towards emerging tech? What is interesting to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing on the consulting side, you know, a huge interest in AR and VR, because retail is really starting to rethink how they sell to customers. And we're talking to some of the biggest retailers now who are saying we need to rethink what stores are for and how we sell. But actually, while they're doing that, they're looking at these technologies. You know, until now, AR and VR have been a bit of a gimmick, really, in terms of it's nice to do some really cool stuff, but it's never really a primary sales channel, whereas we're seeing a lot of retailers really starting to delve into that. And I'm sure Zandra will have more to say about this. We've seen a huge uptake in interest around how AI can help with some of those, you know, real challenges around you know, data and analytics, etc. So I think, you know, it's because we're a consultancy, we are driven by what our customers are looking at, but we're seeing some very big brands starting to, you know, really take AR, VR and AI. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of the utilities now, because they can't have enough people in the field, are looking at AI solutions to really kind of do some of their field management. And you know, previously they thought of the idea and they thought, look, we've got enough people to do it, everybody's going to be in the field, why should we care? And now they're saying, actually, that is a challenge now, because, you know, you can't have people in tight-knit physical spaces in a utility, you know, maintenance facility all the time. So they're starting to look at digital solutions. So those are the three, AR, VR, and AI, where we're seeing a real uptick in interest in terms of how businesses can take advantage of them.
Okay. Anybody else? Zandra?
Yeah, I just something that has really shifted at pace during this period is a phrase that's very Americanized, forgive me, but a citizen data scientist or a citizen developer. And what I mean by that is getting those people that have the power and understanding of the context of a situation that can make a decision, being the ones that are using and building the tools out. So I go back to this no code, but there's absolutely a push now of, instead of projects sitting within tech teams or tech departments or groups of data scientists, that businesses are empowering a level of people that are not necessarily classic kind of technologists or developers, by saying, look, there's a problem, go out and find a way to kind of fix this using technology, and giving them the freedom to do that and the budgets to do that. That has definitely shifted during this period, where we're seeing that kind of domain owner, the owner of the understanding of the context, as opposed to the technology people in organizations. So I think that will drive, and we're seeing it drive, software and platforms which don't need a lot of technical configuration. People can pick them up, learn them without any technical skills at all, and deploy them quickly, and increasingly onto elastic and scalable cloud infrastructure. So AWS is doing very well out of this, because it's quick, it's affordable, spin up, spin down. So I can deploy that tech without having a team of developers and data scientists. I can have a go, I can trial it, I can throw it at a few people, let them have a go. And if it doesn't work, hey, switch it off, it's cost me what? But the domain expert can de-risk that, because there's a combination of no code and elastic kind of cloud infrastructure that comes together to actually accelerate problem solving. And I do think that has been a huge shift during this period, a huge shift.
Anybody else got anything specific? We've got a couple more questions and I would love to get through them. Chris?
Yeah, I guess just quickly, yeah. So I think we've been sort of, not go too much into this, because it's a very recent emerged thing, but yeah, we've been asked to do like a quick sort of proof of concept to almost like reimagine the workplace, which is sort of really interesting. In we may get into it later if we get time, but how when people are comfortable enough, we can sort of gradually sort of phase back the workforce, and whether that's rotating and whether that is ever full again, in line with what I've just been saying. But what's quite interesting, we've come up with a role within there. We're calling it at the minute like a user-focused developer. So excuse the shitty title, because that isn't a that's a very much a work in practice. But someone who's got the skills, I think, because this is done really well, ironically, in the public sector, to do that whole user research, service design piece, and understand personas and understand people's journeys, which obviously is more important than ever when we're looking at going back into workplace and some of the anxieties people have got. But we've created a role where someone who has got those sort of skills and can empathize and understand user needs, but then has also got the skills to maybe quickly prototype a solution, whether it's an augmented reality one, and then actually somebody who could, in theory, implement that. So very early days, as I say, ignore the title, but it's been quite an interesting exercise over the past couple of weeks. So hopefully shed some more on that at a later date. That's
cool. And hopefully those products are going to be way more useful and diverse, in their development. So there's a question specifically for you, Zandra, which also promotes the article we did with you, which feels like it was like put in there, but it absolutely wasn't. Somebody's saying, Jules, that they read the interview you did with EY, which was great, and they talked about resilience. What is it about your culture that's helped your team be resilient, and what lessons have you learned from COVID and will continue in the future? And I think to everybody, what have you learned about resilience and your company's response and coping mechanisms? So maybe start with you, Renee, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Resilience is a really good word. We actually made a button about 2 years ago, and on the button, we have lots of badges, and our most popular badge is our resilience badge. All right, that's the one everybody wants. And at the time, we were thinking about technical resilience, but it spilled over into human resilience as well. I think one of the things that looked like we were smart, but for different reasons, was we actually practiced working remotely en masse. And so we practiced it. We called it business continuity planning. And we told everybody it was because it snows and we have floods. And sometimes we can't get to the office. But our real reason was because we wanted to move to a more flexible working model. And so I said, well, let's practice it and get comfort with it. And so that was the number one thing that looked like we were well ahead of the game, because when people said if you had to move your people off site, well, we had done that twice, quite successfully. And that helped also set people's expectations for, we know we can make it work en masse. And then I think the other piece was, we've done an awful lot of culture work with communication, things like Slack and less popular Yammer, and WhatsApp groups, and having that sense of managers regularly communicating and making sure people were over communicated to helped a lot with the resilience. I'll be honest, we tailed off after about 3 months, and people were like, you stopped talking to us. And I'm like, we are talking to you, but we're talking about work now. And they're like, no, you got to keep telling us what's going on. I'm like, nothing's going on, nobody knows anything. So I learned that you still have to keep over communicating, or what feels like over communicating, to help with that resilience. But I am so impressed with the levels of resilience that I have seen in individuals, because it wasn't as if we kind of went into a hiatus. We went into the busiest, most demanding period in the 3 years I have been in the organization, in lockdown. And so, and people not only coped, but they thrived. They super delivered, right? And I can only peg that to resilience, to all the work we did around culture, around how we work together, practicing working from home, that made the difference.
Mute.
No, I am on mute. Zandra, this obviously was for you initially, so what are your thoughts?
A number of thoughts, really. I think everyone talks about culture, and it's really hard sometimes to pin down what makes that vibe in your business kind of work and is special. And you talk about values, and you talk about behaviors and the things that you do. But we were lucky because we were only 45 people. But when we went into lockdown and we moved everybody home, it was a small enough team that actually, as leaders, we could get around everybody and we could have that quality conversation, back to Renee's point. And sustaining that actually has been the challenge, I think. But actually people want to continue to feel that you really care about them and the whole person. I think back to the point. And I think we already had a baseline in our culture where we had whole company meetings every single week, where we talked about everything from how much money is in the bank through to, who we were hiring and everything that we were doing, so that everybody heard everything that's going on in operation. But we're small enough to do that. So, scaling a culture like that for me is going to be the challenge, and something that I'm really kind of thinking through how we do that effectively. But I think what we had as a business when we went into lockdown enabled us to kind of maintain that, and that's kept people feeling supported. And we have 3 core values. So I think if you have open communication, everybody feels that they are heard, and they believe that when they're saying something, that you're genuinely interested and that you're taking that on board, and that you then do something with that. And you don't just kind of go, yeah, that's great, walk away and do something else. It's really, really important that you're genuinely open and you genuinely listen to everybody, because everyone's got great ideas. They then feel supported. And when people feel supported, they feel safe. And when people feel safe, they're more likely to take risks. And if they're more likely to take risks, then they like to innovate faster. And because we had that foundation of open core communication before lockdown and into lockdown, everyone felt safe enough at home to be able to take those risks. So those projects have happened because people took risks and did things on their own, not usually in teams and around, they'd be in and around working together. They were doing this in what felt like isolation for them, even though they were talking across various channels. So I think, the team dynamic, we benefited from being a small company. And I think I'm interested now for us as a business, how we maintain that as we grow. I think resilience, both as a leader and as individuals in the team, has been about just being authentically open. And, I've cried on people during this period. I've moaned about, all sorts of things, and been okay about it. I've been upset in front of my teams. I've been vulnerable. And actually, when I think you can only get through tough times if you allow people in to support you. And actually that means you need to be a bit vulnerable and let them in. So openness goes both ways, not just listening, but allowing others in. So for me, resilience is about trying to be as authentic as you can and let people support you when you need it. And then you can be resilient because it's about people around you, not just about your own capacity. I know that sounds like a long question, but that for me has been at the heart of a lot of this period.
I think that resonates with me massively, and not too dissimilar size companies, Andrew. So I think like honesty's been a massive thing, because at first I was like, you know, there's almost like, oh, I can't say that, but actually there's difficult times, and I don't think my team had thanked me if, you know, essentially sugarcoat information that could affect their livelihoods. And I think as well, I think you alluded to it, but like enabling more autonomy. So, you know, if we trust the people and that they are brilliant, you know, they've had maybe slightly wider remits, you know, just because of the circumstances, and a lot of them have thrived on it, and right, they're motivated because they actually think, wow, you know, he believes in me, he's got my back, and you know, and there's also, I think it's also important that with that also comes and don't worry, I've got room to fail, and we'll, if you fail, we'll learn from it, but at least the empowerment and stuff is there, and you know, it's moving, I guess, to a more flatter structure, which can only be a more positive thing. Mute, Sarah.
I mean, you think I'd learn by now. So we've literally got 1 minute. So I was thinking, we've got a question for Rima. I don't think we're going to get to answer it, but I'll see if we can share it and share the answer to her. I wanted to thank everybody. I've got one more question. I want to thank everybody for coming on the panel. I wanted to mention that, because I should, and I've just got a text telling me to do, that we have the dates out for the Women in Leeds Digital Conference, and you can find them on our Twitter or our website, which is womeninleadsdigital.com. So please, everybody, come along to that. But I wanted to ask one more question before we left, and I thought it would be interesting that it's August, it's the middle of summer. Before we go, what is everybody doing for fun right now? Chris, what are you doing for fun right now? What does fun look like?
Fun next week will be taking my 2 daughters camping. My wife absolutely hates it. I've tried to sort of drip feed glamping into her, but she's having none of it. So fun next week will be camping with my 10 and 7-year-old daughter.
Cool. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. We've just been camping actually. So we've already done it, and I've had all the complaints and all the moaning, etc. So we've got past it now. So yeah, camping was just being able to get out. I think, you know, having those staycations. So we're looking forward to having much more days off and doing some interesting things locally, really.
Just to add, I had my first camping trip last week as well. So just in case we're going to have a full house here. Zandra, what are you doing for fun?
I've had a caravan for however many years, so I am a hardcore sort of camper, not in a tent, in a caravan, but still. So we
prepared for COVID with
fully prepared. Well, so prepared that we only had one office in the house. My husband's office then became the caravan. He got relegated to the caravan, bless him. So he was out there for most of lockdown working. But fun, yeah, camping. I do a lot of that. I think we've discovered board games again.
Wow, yeah.
And you know what? There's board games we've had away in cupboards, and oh God, I can't be bothered playing that game. We're now completely loving them. And I'm not saying that we're playing board games all the time. I'm not that great a mum, actually, but I've discovered my love for board games again. My kids have encouraged that in, but that's been, yeah, we've enjoyed doing that actually. So rediscovering some simple pleasures, I think, at the moment, which has been really nice.
Renee, what are you up to?
Quickly, so anybody who knows me is I'm a little tanner than normal because I was very brave and went on an actual holiday. So my husband and I just came back from a holiday in Italy, which is one of the only countries you don't have to quarantine. Yay! And that was fantastic. But in normal life, my fun is my garden, which is why I've put makeup over top of whatever else was going on in the gardening. And that's been amazing. I've got pumpkins for everyone. So if you write to me, I have a pumpkin.
I love that. So listen, you guys have been absolutely amazing. As I say, this is going to be recorded, so please find it on the Transition Partners website, share it, watch it again, enjoy it. Thank you so much to all of you. You've all been a fantastic panel and really enjoyed it. Thank you for everybody coming and listening.
Thanks, everyone.
You have to
Thanks,
do the
everybody.
traditional bye.